I was standing in the driveway of my cottage in Prince Edward County loading the last box of decorations into my car when my phone buzzed. It was a text from my mother. I read it twice. Then I sat down on the frozen gravel because my legs stopped working. Thanksgiving this year is family only. Your father and I think it's best if you skip this one. Colton's parents are flying in from Calgary and we want things to feel cohesive. You understand. 3 hours earlier, I had transferred $11,400 to my parents' joint account. My father had called me the week before, voice tight, asking if I could help cover the property tax shortfall on the family home in Oakville. He said they were behind. He said it was temporary. He said I was the only one he trusted with this. I didn't hesitate. I pulled up my banking app, typed in the amount, and hit confirm. The notification said, "Transfer complete." His next message said, "You're not invited to Thanksgiving." My name is Vivienne. I'm 31 years old. I grew up in a 4-bedroom house in Oakville, Ontario, the kind of neighborhood where everyone keeps their lawn edged and their opinions about you very loud. I have one older brother, the kind of son my parents built their entire identity around. His name is Colton. He played hockey until his knees gave out, went to Queens, married a woman named Paige who my mother describes as effortlessly put together, and last spring, got a job offer in Vancouver that my father talked about at every dinner for 6 months straight. I took a different path. I left home at 19 with a used MacBook and a freelance design contract I'd gotten by cold emailing a startup founder at 2 a.m. By 24, I had a boutique brand consultancy. By 28, I had 7 full-time clients and a waiting list. Last year, I sold a minority stake in the business to a private equity group out of Toronto for $1.8 million. My parents don't know that last part. They think I do logos for small businesses. They think my cottage in Prince Edward County is a rental I split with friends. They think I drive a practical car because I'm not flashy like Colton. They have never once asked me how work is going. They ask Colton that question every single Sunday. I sat in the driveway for a long time after that text. The October wind was coming off the lake and I was underdressed and I didn't move. I thought about calling her back. I thought about forwarding her the transaction confirmation. "Look, I paid you. Now you're uninviting me. Read this back to yourself out loud." I thought about crying. I didn't do any of those things. I went back inside, put the kettle on, and opened my contacts. Before I tell you exactly what I did next, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there. I want to know how far this reaches. My aunt on my father's side, his younger sister, hadn't been invited to a family holiday in 4 years. The reason my mother gave was that she brings a dark energy. The real reason is that she asked my father in front of guests why he'd borrowed money from her and never paid it back. That was the end of that. She lives alone in a basement apartment in Hamilton, works nights at a distribution center, and texts me funny videos about her cat on a near daily basis. She is the only person in my extended family who ever came to any of my work events. Then there's my cousin from my mother's side, my uncle's youngest daughter, who got quietly removed from the family group chat 2 Christmases ago because she announced she was pregnant and unmarried, and my mother said she wasn't ready to explain that to Colton's in-laws. She had the baby in February. No one from our side of the family sent so much as a card. I also thought about my dad's old colleague from his teaching days, a man who'd been like a second father to me in high school, who used to quiz me on my design work and tell me I was going to do something real with it. My parents stopped inviting him to things after he retired, and my father decided he was past his prime and kind of sad to be around. He lives in Kingston now. He started watercolor painting. I follow his Instagram. He's genuinely good. I started making calls. I didn't explain everything. I just said, "I'm hosting Thanksgiving at my place. I want you there. I'll cover the travel." My aunt thought I was joking. When she realized I wasn't, she was quiet for a long time, and then she said, "I haven't been to a real Thanksgiving dinner in years, Vivienne." Her voice did something complicated, and I had to walk to the window so she wouldn't hear me lose it a little bit. I told her to pack for the weekend. I told her I'd send a car. I spent the next 2 days cooking. Not catering. Cooking. Turkey from a farm 20 minutes away. Squash soup with actual squash I caught myself. butter tarts from a recipe I'd been hoarding since culinary school. I set the table in the dining room with the good linens, the ones I bought at a little shop in Stratford last spring and had never used because I kept waiting for an occasion worthy of them. This was the occasion. Thanksgiving morning, I checked the weather in Oakville. Cold, gray, the kind of flat overcast that makes everything look like a school photo. The forecast showed sleet starting around noon. I texted my decorator friend and asked her to bring the extra candle arrangements she'd been storing at her studio, and she showed up at 9 with 3 boxes and a bottle of Prosecco. By 2 in the afternoon, the table was full. My aunt had arrived the night before and slept in the guest room and woken up and wandered into the kitchen in her socks and said I forgot what it felt like to wake up somewhere warm. I handed her a coffee and didn't make a big deal of it because I could tell she needed me not to. My cousin came with her baby, 7 months old, the most good-natured creature I have ever met, and set up a little playmat on the living room floor, and everyone kept rotating through to sit on the floor and make faces at him. My father's old colleague drove down from Kingston and brought wine and his newest watercolor, a painting of the lake behind the Rideau Center, and said I could keep it if I had a wall for it. I told him I had a perfect wall. At some point in the afternoon, my cousin's baby fell asleep on my aunt's chest, and my aunt sat very still, not wanting to move him, and her face had this expression I didn't have a word for. Just open. Like something that had been clenched for a long time had finally let go. I had hired a photographer. Not a big production. Just a friend of a friend who does lifestyle shoots. Someone quiet with a good eye. She moved around the table gently, unhurried, and at some point I forgot she was there. When I reviewed the photos that evening, I almost couldn't look at them. Not because they were bad, because they were the most beautiful pictures of my life. I posted 7 of them to Instagram around 8 o'clock. The caption took me a long time to write. I didn't want it to be messy. I didn't want to be messy. I wanted it to be precise, something that would say exactly what I meant and nothing more. Thankful for the people who showed up when it mattered. To the table that was always here for you. I'm glad you finally found it. And to the family in Oakville, I hope the $11,400 I transferred last week is keeping the heat on. You're going to need it this weekend. I put my phone face down on the kitchen counter. I went back to the table. My aunt had put the baby down in the travel crib I'd set up in the second bedroom, and she came back with her hair a little messed from leaning over the crib rail, and she said, I think he's actually down, like she was reporting a miracle, and everyone laughed. We played cards. We ate 3 kinds of pie. My father's old colleague told a story about a student he'd had in the 90s who'd gone on to run a boutique architecture firm in Montreal, and how he'd gotten a card from her last year that just said, "You were the one who told me I was allowed to want more." He said he'd kept it in his desk drawer for 11 months. I didn't check my phone. At 10:30, I cleared the last of the dishes and my aunt came and stood beside me at the sink, and we washed up together without talking much, and it was the most at home I'd felt in a long time. I went to bed at midnight. At some point before 2, my phone lit up the nightstand. I turned the sound off, but I hadn't turned it off completely, and the screen kept flaring white in the dark. I reached over and looked at the notifications. 41 missed calls. My mother. My father. My brother. My mother again. A number I didn't recognize with an Oakville area code. My father 3 more times. I set the phone back down. I lay in the dark for a while, listening to the wind off the water, and then I put in my earplugs and went back to sleep. In the morning, I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table with my aunt, who was leaving after breakfast, and I checked the voicemails with my mug in both hands. My mother's first message was controlled. Careful. The voice she uses when she's performing reasonableness for an audience that isn't there. Vivienne, I don't know what you think you're doing, but this is not appropriate. Colton's mother saw your post. She's asking us questions. Please call me back and we can discuss this like adults. The second message was 45 minutes later and the performance was over. You have humiliated this family in front of people who matter. Do you understand what you've done? Colton's in-laws flew in from Calgary. They follow me on Instagram. They are asking why we apparently can't pay our own property taxes. Delete that post. Delete it right now. My brother's message was short. He sounded genuinely confused, which was the most honest I'd heard him in years. Viv, what is happening? Mom is actually crying. Can you just call me? The one from the unknown number turned out to be my father's accountant, of all people, asking me to call the office when I had a moment. I deleted that one. I put the phone down and looked at my aunt. She was watching me carefully, hands wrapped around her mug. They called 41 times, I said. She nodded slowly. What are you going to do? Nothing, I said. Not yet. The post had been shared just over 300 times overnight. The comments were not ambiguous. People were tagging my mother's Facebook page. She still uses Facebook religiously, asking why she was accepting money from a daughter she'd excluded from her own family holiday. Colton's mother had apparently commented something diplomatically, worded but clearly pointed. Several of my mother's book club friends had liked the post. My mother's book club is the most important institution in her life, more important than church, and every one of those likes landed like a small detonation. They were not calling because they missed me. They were calling because I had taken the one thing they'd never expected me to have, the narrative. For as long as I can remember, the story in my family was very simple. Colton was the success. I was the one they worried about. Colton built things. I was finding myself. Colton made practical choices. I took risks. And when those risks paid off, I didn't tell anyone, because some part of me had absorbed the belief that my success was a fluke, and that if I said it out loud, they would find a way to explain it away. One set of photographs had rewritten all of that. And they were panicking. I sent my aunt off after breakfast with a cooler full of leftovers and a painting my father's old colleague had also insisted she take. A small one, the lake at dusk. And she hugged me at the car for a long time without saying anything. I drove back inside, sat down at my desk, and called my brother back. He picked up on the first ring. Viv. He sounded exhausted. What is going on? How was Thanksgiving? I asked. Silence. It was fine, he said finally. Paige's mom brought a really good stuffing. The sleet was bad. Dad's in a state, I know. Another silence. Then you transferred $11,000 to them. 11,400, I said. Yes. And then they told you not to come. The same afternoon. I could hear him breathing. Viv, I didn't know about that. I want you to know that. I believed him, actually. My brother isn't cruel. He's just passive in a way that functions the same as cruelty when you're on the receiving end of it. I know. I said again. Can you take the post down? No. Viv. No, Colton. I kept my voice level. They took my money and told me the optics of my presence were inconvenient. I am allowed to document my own Thanksgiving. He went quiet again for a long time. Then he said something I didn't expect. Your cottage looked really beautiful. Thank you. I didn't know it was yours. I know, I said. That's sort of the point. We hung up. My parents called 3 more times that day. I didn't answer. My mother sent a text that said, "We need to talk about what you've done to this family." I screenshotted it and sent it to my lawyer, who I'd already briefed that morning just to have a record. Then, at 4 in the afternoon on Saturday, my parents showed up at my front gate. I have a long gravel laneway and a wooden gate at the road. Not dramatic, not iron, just practical. And I saw the headlights from the kitchen window. I recognized my father's Volvo. They had driven 2.5 hours from Oakville in the rain. I put on my coat and boots and walked down to meet them. My father was standing outside the car when I got there. He looked like a man who had spent 48 hours being slowly unpressurized. His coat was half open despite the cold. My mother was still in the passenger seat, arms crossed. "Open the gate," he said. "No," I said. "You're not staying. Vivienne." His voice had that particular quality, the one he used when he was trying to make me feel like a teenager being corrected. "You have behaved in an embarrassing and vindictive way, and you need to take that post down before the damage gets any worse." "What damage?" I asked. "To what? To this family." I looked at him. He looked older than I remembered, somehow. Or maybe I'd just stopped softening my vision when I looked at him. "You took my money," I said, "and uninvited me in the same afternoon. What did you think was going to happen? You're being dramatic." "I transferred $11,400 to your account at 10:47 a.m., I said. "Your text came in at 12:15. That's 90 minutes. He opened his mouth. I have the timestamps, I said. Both of them. My mother had gotten out of the car. She was standing by the hood with her arms still crossed and her chin up, the way she poses for photos. "We have always supported you," she said. "We have always been in your corner." I thought about every parents' weekend she didn't come to. Every work milestone I shared that got a 3-second response and then a pivot to something Colton had done. Every time I needed something and was told it wasn't the right moment. The Thanksgiving I was 14 and sprained my ankle during the setup, and my father told me to stop making it about myself. "I know you believe that," I said. She shifted. Something in her face flickered. "We need to talk about the property, about the future of the family home." "I know about the property," I said. She stopped. "Here is what my parents do not know. 8 months ago, I was doing due diligence on a potential acquisition for one of my clients, a small property management firm, and in reviewing documents, I came across information about a cluster of residential mortgage files that a regional bank in Ontario was looking to offload, non-performing loans, distressed assets they wanted cleared before year-end. My parents' address was in the file. I called my lawyer. I asked a lot of questions. Then I made a quiet, private decision, and I did not tell anyone. I had purchased their mortgage note, not their house, the debt, the paper, which meant that I, not the bank, not some faceless institution, was now my parents' lien holder. I was the entity they technically owed their remaining mortgage balance to. I had planned to say nothing. I planned to hold it quietly, like a card you keep face down because you don't need to play it. They'd come to my gate in the rain and told me I'd embarrassed the family. I pulled out my phone. "You're 8 months behind," I said. The bank classified the loan as non-performing and offered it to distressed asset buyers. I was one of them. I turned the screen toward them. "I bought the note in September. I'm your lien holder now." My father stared at the documents on my screen. His face went through several expressions very quickly. "That's not," he started. "It's completely legal," I said. "I had 3 lawyers look at it. You can call the bank if you'd like. They'll confirm the transfer." My mother's composure finally cracked. Not loudly, just a fracture, visible at the edges. "You're going to take the house." "I haven't decided what I'm going to do," I said. "As of this week, I've been focused on hosting Thanksgiving for the people you've been cutting out of your life for a decade." My father grabbed the gate. Not violently, just the gesture of a man who needed something to hold on to. "Vivienne, you're our daughter." "I know," I said. "You made that feel very conditional for a very long time." "We can work this out," he said. "Come inside. We'll sit down." "You're not coming inside," I said. "Come inside. We'll sit down." "You're not coming inside," I said. "I didn't invite you." The words landed. I watched them land. "The note," I continued, "means that any decision about the property comes through me now. I haven't activated anything. But I want you to understand the position you're in, not as a threat, as information." My mother said, very quietly, "Where are we supposed to go?" "Home," I said. "You drove here. You can drive back." My father looked at me for a long time. The rain had started up again, light and steady. He looked like he was searching for something in my face. The version of me that would apologize, that would smooth it over, that would make this easier for everyone. He didn't find it. They got back in the Volvo. My mother didn't look at me. My father reversed down the laneway without saying anything else. I stood at the gate until the taillights disappeared. The gravel was wet under my boots. The wind came off the lake and smelled like iron and pine. I stood there for a while, not moving, just breathing, feeling the cold settle into my jacket. Then I walked back up the laneway to the house where the lights were on and the pie was still on the counter and there were watercolor paintings leaning against the wall, waiting to be hung. I went inside. I made tea. I sat at the kitchen table where 24 hours ago there had been 7 people laughing over butter tarts and a baby sleeping on my aunt's chest. And I thought about the girl who used to eat alone at the kitchen island at 14 and believed that was just how love worked in her family, that it was earned, rationed, conditional on not being too much or too loud or too visible at the wrong moment. I thought about her for a long time. Then I opened my laptop and started working on the wall arrangement for the paintings. I didn't lose a family that weekend. I finally understood what I'd had all along, and what I'd been waiting, without knowing it, to build.